Hey everybody, this is Jacob Stoops, and I am back with season 2 of the Page 2 podcast. And I must admit, it was a little bit arbitrary to decide to end season 1, but I felt like 25 episodes were enough. I felt like I needed a little bit of a break in between, and I felt like definitely needed that break to really rethink. One, whether or not it was worth kind of continuing, and two, to kind of reorganize a lot of stuff. But I think the biggest cat that I wanted to let out of the bag is that I have now a co-host, somebody joining me, and that man's name is Jeff Louella. How's it going, Jeff?
Hey everybody, how you doing? Everything's going good over here.
Dude, thanks for agreeing to come on. So for those of you that didn't listen to Jeff's interview, Jeff, just tell everybody about yourself.
Awesome. I'll give you the shorter version. If you want the longer version, you can go back and listen to that episode. But
the version you want.
Awesome. So I've been kind of working in and around the internet industry, we'll say, early on. So back in the early 90s, I actually helped build my community college website. It was a class that taught you how to do HTML, and the same idea was that class was going to build that community college's website. So that's where I kind of gotten into just like learning about the internet, doing HTML, things like that. Kind of was one of the only people that had Photoshop back then. I'm not going to say if it was legal or not, but I had it. And that made me a web designer by default, because I knew how to do some HTML and cut up some things from Photoshop. So made me a web designer. But actually, one of the main reasons I wanted to learn how to do the web is I was a DJ and I wanted to promote my music and DJing stuff. So I really got more into the real audio aspect of things, doing real audio streams and things like that. Actually got a job in doing kind of front-end development and design, but also got to do some real audio streaming for some off-track betting OTB sites.
Was it DJ Jazzy Jeff?
No, I was, my DJ name was Mookie, which has kind of been a name I've had since I was younger, that moved up. And, you know, jumping ahead, it's my kind, I do some FPV drone racing stuff, and that's my name there too. So, but back then, internet stunk. Like it was, everyone had dial up and things like that. So my wonderful idea of having like an online radio station today would actually have worked well. Now there's a million of them, but back then it was really hard to get people to, if I had 10 people on my stream, it was like dying the stream. So, but used all that knowledge, mostly moved into front-end development once I learned that designers, real designers, I came out of school doing design, were way better than me. And they started getting into the web. It was great there. But as a front-end developer, I was really pushing things like accessibility and web standards, trying to get people out of table-based designs into using modern HTML, CSS, JavaScript, presentation layer type of things. From there, though, there was accessibility was not a great business. It's catching on these days, but back then it's like, if I'm not being sued, I'm not going to do it. Though SEO has a lot of the same things, right? Google's the largest blind user on the internet. So we get to, a lot of things would do for SEO. I still, in my head, think of it as an accessibility angle of things. And while I'm not necessarily looking to optimize a form right now for accessibility, but a lot of the other standards, making it easier to read for crawlers and for screen readers, really help out that way. So, but today I've been doing SEO about 12 years-ish, mostly focus on a lot of the technical and back-end things of SEO. Though whatever you throw at me, I will do. But currently at Search Discovery, I moved into a platform engineer role where I still do SEO, but I'm working a lot more on analytics and implementations and tag management type of software.
So one of the reasons that I thought Jeff would be an amazing fit on this podcast, I think, one, selfishly, like, it takes a lot to run a podcast.
Yeah.
This started off as like hey, I'm going to start a podcast because I think it would be a cool idea. And because like for me, it's just like, I've always had a creative itch, whether it's tinkering around on my website or editing video, doing Photoshop. I don't know. I've always had like a creative itch, and I kind of enjoy doing this kind of stuff. So podcast was a way, especially with the way kind of new media is going. Podcast is the new blogging, right?
Yep.
Anyways, so it allowed me to scratch that creative itch, but there is so much that goes into it, from actually figuring out like, well, what the hell do I want a podcast even about? Like, what do I want to talk about? Who would listen to me? Do I have an idea worth listening to? And once you like figure out, I think I do. Okay, well, what format do I want to use? What software do I use to edit? What software do I use to capture the audio? Once I capture it, how do I edit? How do I put everything together? How do I go book guests? Do I need a website? Do I need to do social media? And like, it just goes on from there, and it quickly spirals out of control. So selfishly, I was looking for someone to help carry that burden, who is just as passionate about being creative and kind of scratching that itch, but also to SEO, just as passionate as me. And I think the other thing is, I think there are two other things. One, I don't think I've ever mentioned a person's name in the industry where Jeff hasn't known them. Either like been like a loose colleague, or like have met or talked with them, or is like friends with them. I really don't think that there's anybody that Jeff hasn't known, to the fact where I almost kind of like make fun of it now, because it kind of cracks me up, because he seems to know everybody. But I thought that would be really beneficial in terms of just opening up avenues to find and talk to more really smart people. To this point, it had been me tapping friends and colleagues on the shoulder and lightly twisting their arm and saying, "Want to come on my podcast?" Or it had been me just blindly reaching out to people that I didn't know, in many cases, and almost like a cold call, saying, "You want to come on my podcast?" with those people having no clue who I was, and I wouldn't say that I'm well known at all. So no clue what to expect. Most of them seem to enjoy it, which is good, but I think Jeff's network is amazing. And then Jeff, like, he didn't mention it, but dude is super interesting. He flies and builds drones. You do, you've got an axe, you built a freaking axe throwing range in your backyard. You do 3D printing. You brew your own, I believe, whiskey, right?
Yeah, well,
you do like everything. It's amazing.
Not everything,
on top of having like a brood of kids as well to manage. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, it's you just give the kids iPads and they just. No, I'm kidding. It is fun. I'm lucky now that my kids are a little older, so they just go outside and play, and they play with the kids in the neighborhood, which is great. I do. I love hobbies. I love learning new things, whether it's, SEO, web development, things like that. I've been focusing a lot on like the work-life balance, and part of the life part is just having a little more fun, and took up, FPV drone. I don't race. I do freestyle, but it's the same drone setup, but you build them, customize them. You don't have to program them, but you got to tune them to fly really well. And you throw on some goggles and it feels like you're a jet fighter pilot, which is an experience that I've never really had, right? So it's like being able to fly a toy around at 80 miles an hour. It's pretty fun doing it. You forgot to mention I'm a professional athlete now since I joined a cornhole league.
That's right.
So it's
professional amateur.
So it's the one athletic aspect. I can hold a beer and play a game at the same time and call myself an athlete. So
absolutely. Yeah. So you're way more interesting than I am. You know way more people, and I needed somebody to help. So welcome, awesome. Jeff.
Welcome, Jeff. For having me.
No, I'm excited. I think I want to talk a little bit more about like, what did I learn, or what were the good things about, what occurred in season one. But I'm definitely excited to have another voice and somebody else to contribute to the conversation, because believe it or not, like, it feels like a lot of pressure when you have to be the one driving the conversation all the time. And believe it or not, that is not my forte. So.
Yeah, totally. I mean, from when I used to do DJing, like I always had a goal to be on the radio, and I actually worked for a couple of radio stations as an intern, and it quickly made me not want to work in traditional radio, because you are the intern when you're there, you're getting coffee, you're cleaning all the consoles. No one who's on the air really wants to talk to you. At least back then. I actually, there were sister stations, and one was a talk radio station with Rush Limbaugh, which was super interesting, because he was just very, you could tell that would be interesting there. But their sister station was a pop station, which I was like, great, I can get onto this. But as I said, just working for 6 months as an intern really made me hate doing that. So I've always had the dream, and then now that podcasts are out, it is a lot of work to get one set up. And the beauty of this position that I'm in now is that you did all that hard work already, so now I can come in and
Yeah, you're right. But it's actually like, okay, I'm complaining about all of the hard work. It's actually not that hard. Like, I'm a freaking amateur. It's not like I'm like running a radio station or anything. Like, I've got a computer, I've got a decent microphone set up, and that's it. Like, you just have to like have access to some editing software, a lot of which is free or very cheap, and you just have to understand like the distribution platforms and everything that goes into that. And honestly, it's not that hard once you figure that out and you have something worthwhile to talk about. So there, don't get me wrong, there is, and I think I talked about this in one of the episodes about setting up a podcast. Like, there is a lot that goes into it, but like, the barrier to entry is as low as it's ever been, and it's getting lower.
Correct,
Getting lower. Anyways, so let me talk about season one, and I would be remiss to talk about season one, episodes 1 through 25, and not thank everybody. So I'm literally going to go one by one and name and thank everybody, because without all of these people that were willing to come on and talk with me, I wouldn't have a show. I wouldn't have a show. So I'm going to start with the man, Rand Fishkin, who I actually did an interview with him while I was at Startups, and he was nice enough to allow me to use it for the first episode and adapt it for this podcast, because we did talk about a lot of SEO related stuff. So nothing like starting out episode number 1 with Rand Fishkin. That was pretty cool. Zach Chahalis, Sal Sura, Maggie Barr, Cindy Crum, Nick Ranger, Jeff, of course, Margie Stahl, Joanna Galish, Matt Osuch, Daniel Eng, Samantha Mayer, Nick Eubanks, Janet Bartoli, Tom Rayner, J.R. Oaks, the trio of Tim Wilson, Michael Helbling, and Noah Omri Levin, Jennifer Wright, Brian Gorman, Nikki Mosier, Jenny Hallis, J.P. Sherman, and Ross Hudgens. Those were all of my guests from season 1, and I wanted to thank you all again. You all were amazing, and if you happen to listen, just know that there's always a place for you, and I want to make it very clear that anybody that has been on this show at least once, always welcome back. If you have something you want to talk about, always welcome. I will say, like I said before, most of them were my friends or colleagues before, and many of them I didn't know. So it was a good mix of for me getting out of my comfort zone, and also some of it staying in my comfort zone by talking to people I knew. So it was really, really awesome. In terms of, well, let me talk about some of the mistakes I made. And I think the biggest one, and it's actually driving me crazy even to this moment, because I didn't really feel like, I didn't know if the podcast would be successful or worth continuing to pursue. And I think success is relative, right? It's not like I have a bazillion downloads or listens or anything like that. I think what it's given me is a great excuse to meet a bunch of really great people. But the one thing I didn't do, and I should have done it, and I'm killing myself right now, is I did not buy the .com domain. And when I decided after season 1, maybe this is a real thing, maybe I need to stand up a website, I went to GoDaddy and I searched page2podcast.com. Yes, because when I had originally decided on this brand and this title name, nobody had it. And of course, taken. And I was like, what? Taken? And with some quick research, some quick plugging in of the name, it turns out a church has also decided to choose to use this brand name, which is really embarrassing, especially because I'm an SEO. That's like 101 level stuff, and I can't believe that I missed it. The good thing is I started mine way before them, in the fall of last year. So I've had it for about a year. They didn't start until about April. And in checking their site today, the damn site is down. Like, I don't know if they folded. I've reached out to them and they don't want to sell me the domain name. So I do know that I'm going to work on getting the trademark. So eventually I can go back and be the only owner of this brand. But I just want to slap myself in the face for not thinking, even if I wasn't going to do anything with it, to buy the domain. It was so stupid. And now I'm regretting it. But what I will say is we did buy a domain. It's page2podcast.fm, which I actually like better. We have stood up a website, and I think it's pretty damn cool. And the homepage is a play off of Step Brothers, which is pretty damn funny. But yeah, man, I feel so stupid. And of all things, a church, how does a church stumble on the name Page? I just don't even understand how they would stumble on that name.
Yeah, well, the good thing is it looks like it expires in January, so January 1st. So maybe they won't renew.
I'll be right on top of that if they are not continuing to pursue their podcast.
Right. So, either way, we'll outrank them.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is I thought about okay, do I rebrand? Do I go through that? And I was like, hell no. I'm an SEO. No, I'm just going to optimize them. And other than owning the domain, I'm not going to allow them. And I'm not trying to be mean or anything like that, but this is what I do. You're coming into my arena, even though I was an idiot and gave them a clear advantage. No, now they're coming into my arena and we're going to figure this thing out. The other thing that I thought was a mistake is part of my personal brand, and it's more just who I am. I like mob movies, and my original idea for the format was to find a way to integrate that in some way within the original format. You can actually hear it in the first couple of episodes before I decided to kind of change the music and be less awful. Was the format originally was very clunky and very segmented, which is funny because we're actually going to a more regimented format in season 2, which we'll talk about. But the format was clunky, and I knew pretty quickly that okay, this is awful and amateurish, and it's time to make a change both to the music as well as the cadence of how episodes were introduced and the flow of episodes. And it really actually became, after episode 5, more of just kind of a free-flowing conversation, and I do hope to keep kind of an element of that, but it really turned into really nice, just free-flowing conversations that just kind of went wherever they went, under the main premise of telling the origin story of where people come from.
Was that because I didn't know mob movies?
You came in at episode 7, so you were right on the cusp of the new and improved 2.0 format of Page 2 podcast. But no, I mean, do you know mob movies?
I have seen them. I will not say that I am. I'll say that I haven't watched The Sopranos, and I know that's probably, you wouldn't have picked me if I told you that. couple of
No,
months ago. So.
I will say I'm going to give for anybody out there that does like mob movies, there's a really good one coming up that I'm going to give you a tip on, and it's only going to be available on Netflix, and it's called The Irishman. So look that up. It had, and I will tell you, it is probably the last, I don't want to say the last great mob movie, but it's definitely probably going to be the last movie that Pesci is in. So Pesci came out of retirement, Joe Pesci, the actor from Goodfellas, Casino, and for those of you that don't know those movies, Home Alone, the bungling burglar in Home Alone, which he was hilarious in. He came out of retirement to play mob boss Russell Bufalino. And you've also got in this movie De Niro, Pacino, Harvey Keitel, which are three like mainstays in the mob genre, and they've never actually all been in a film together. Martin Scorsese directing. He's worked with all of these actors except Pacino individually, or sometimes in tandems, but never all together. And then I don't know if you guys will recognize this name, but the guy named Stephen Graham, in another guy named Bobby Cannavale, who were both in Boardwalk Empire. Stephen Graham played Al Capone. He was also in Gangs of New York, many other movies. He's actually like a really famous face. You just wouldn't know his name, so he's in this movie as well. Anyways, so that's a tip. The Irishman, it comes out in late November. I am apparently the new PR person for that. But anyways, getting back to season one, what do I think went well? The concept of, so what I didn't want to be, and I said this all throughout season, like I'm ever the smartest SEO in the room. I've done this for a long time, but there's always somebody smarter than you, and there's always more to learn. There's always somebody with either more experience, different experiences, or a different perspective. And I never ever want to consider myself the smartest SEO in the room, which is why sometimes I kind of cringe. I cringe a lot at the conference circuit. I cringe a lot at just different aspects of the industry and certain personalities in the industry that claim to have all of the tips, all of the advice, all of the expertise, and they're infallible and never wrong. And that just wasn't me. So I wanted to talk about SEO, but if that was the way that I was going to do it, I just wouldn't have done it, because that's just not me. That's not who I am. But I did have an idea, because one of the things that intrigues me, and I've said this many, many times, and this is going to continue to be a hallmark of the show, is that because there isn't like formal, there's, at least as it stands now, there's no formal way to go get trained to be an SEO, like it's within traditional educational mediums like colleges.
Right.
You learn marketing and it touches on SEO, but like when those folks with marketing degrees come out of college, they are in no way prepared to start a career in SEO. No way. They're so green. And it's not their fault, right? Everybody tells you, get a degree, go to college. It's the thing that you do after high school. So it's what you're supposed to do. So the people that are doing that are doing the right thing. But if you want to get into this career, like honestly, most of the people that have gotten into it were either there when it started, like Jeff, basically, just working on the internet and adapted into SEOs, or you got into it by accident. Like we've had so many careers, and I actually want to create like a page on our new site that just talks about the weird careers that people had before they were SEOs. Glass blowers, archaeologists, electric violinists, amazing. And it fascinates me. It's like, well, how the hell did you go from that to SEO? So like, as I started talking to people, and not only that, I didn't just want to talk about the origin stories, but like I wanted to talk about like what it's like day to day, because like day to day, man, you can get so frustrated with the way things go with your accounts. And there are huge highs, low lows, and it's a grind. And I didn't feel, I didn't feel like there were a lot of shows out there like talking about like, if you go and do a career in SEO, like if this is what you want to do, this is really what it's like. Because like what you see on the surface is like everybody talking about like how great it is, and it's always like up and to the right, traffic movement. It's so easy, and it's really not. It takes a lot of patience, a lot of grit, and a lot of determination. And there's a lot of success, sure, but there's a lot of failure as well. And you don't necessarily see that on the surface. And that's the angle that I felt like, okay, this is my unique angle. This is what I can bring to the market that's not there now. And as I started talking to people and like interviewing people, and as people started listening, I do feel like I got a sense of validation that like, hey, this isn't a terrible idea. Now, maybe it's never going to be as popular as some of the more well-known SEOs, and I guess I'm okay with that. But right. Good idea, and it's a good avenue to explore, and that's something I want to continue to explore. So I felt like that was a really good thing for me. That is why I'm still doing this. I'll probably just do this in perpetuity now, because there's literally no shortage. Like Jeff and I, like before we started season 2, literally put together a giant list of SEOs, and I don't even think we've scratched the surface, and the list is hundreds long. Like, so we could growing. Do hundreds of shows. There are hundreds of shows and stories out there like waiting to be told. So like we're excited to tell them.
Yeah,
cool, man.
It's awesome.
So Jeff, what's in store for season 2? Help everybody understand like what we've got kind of lined up.
Yeah, definitely. So Jacob's going to be stepping aside, and I'm going to take over the whole thing. No, I'm kidding. I think a lot of the same from last year. I mean, I think we're going to work off of the success you had, where just getting to understand and have SEOs tell their stories, how they got into it, what is their backstories, what are some of their passions inside of SEO, outside of SEO. In general, like that. I think we'll be adding a little bit. Well, I know we'll be adding a little bit more of the news, even though on a podcast maybe it's not as evergreen because news comes and goes. But in general, just talking with our guests about how we will, just current news that's going on, just to pick your brains, find out what people feel about it. Google's always changing. Bing is now like 30% of the market. So they say. So you're just understanding that stuff, what's going on, and giving a talk about it. But I don't see that being a main purpose in there, but we're doing some aspects. I think we're going to be a little more like 3 or 4 times a month we're trying to knock one out a week.
Consistency. That was another failure of season 1, is like it was really hard because you were at the mercy of other people's schedules, and we're still like that, but with one person trying to like do everything, it was really hard to like be well organized. And I think this year, like we've brought some, and it's funny, I'm a mob guy, and with that comes organized crime. And I think there's going to be some organization to what's going on this year. So I think we're going to be able to be a little bit more consistent with putting out episodes, which as I hear is critical to success. So definitely wanted to check that box.
No, agreed. And having like set schedules also helps people know to like, hey, on Monday or Tuesday it comes out and we need to, they're looking forward to it, right? They look forward to the next episode. So.
Look forward to it.
Oh, definitely will.
And so we already have also for season 2 some really amazing guests lined up, and like I do want to preview a few of them, but like we've got, let me look at the list. Simon Cox. We've got Mr. J.R. Oaks making a comeback, and specifically that episode is going to be interesting because we are bringing in Martin Splitt.
Can't wait.
Yeah, from Google. That's awesome. In that episode with 4 people, and I'm used to just having 2 people interview style, having a roundtable discussion, and specifically like we're going to talk about Martin's background, like what does it take to get to frickin' Google? Like, how do you get there? Is it really like the Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson interns movie? Is it really like that? Or like, is there something else? And then we're going to deep dive into JavaScript, which is going to be awesome. And then after that, we've got Kelly Stanzi, Alicia Anderson, Angela Bergman. We've got Mr. Patrick Stocks, Mr. Ahrefs, newly acquired Ahrefs and IBM. And we've got some other really good guests lined up and coming along. I don't want to like bury the lead, but there's going to be some really smart people, and we're really excited.
I think we have Larry Page and Sergey coming on, right?
Right. Yeah, I've got them on my. Yeah, actually, I'm sure you've got them. You've got their email, right?
Yeah, I'll just make a call and we'll
Right.
get them on. Just kidding.
Cool, man. So lots of really good stuff coming in season 2. So we're really excited about it. So definitely make sure you pay attention. But for this particular session, I wanted to do our first round of SEO news. And it's not that I just want to just talk about the news and react, but I think honestly, I think hearing some of our reactions and probably some skepticism over certain things is going to be the hallmark of this section, to hear what SEOs really think when they're put on the spot about certain things. You're going to if you listened last year to the Rel Next and Rel Prev news and you heard me go off, there are going to be, and actually today, there are going to be some things that I might just go off on. So I think it's going to be really cool to talk with other SEOs and talk about the stories of the day and listen to their real unfiltered thoughts about what news is kind of coming out in the industry.
Yeah. You mean putting SEO on autopilot?
Fucking SEO on autopilot. Right. Where is that article? I'm going to pull that article up.
Yeah, I have it. I can slack it to you.
Can you just read it to me? Music for my. You don't have to read the whole thing.
So BrightEdge is automating SEO with the launch of the BrightEdge Autopilot. They announced this at Share 19. I just at the title alone, I cringed when I read it because if anyone knows, I don't think SEO can be put on autopilot. There may be tasks and things that we can do better. I think we really, part of what I love to do in my job is automating some things. But it's not really automating decisions and processes like that, right? It's kind of using all the tools and things that we have out that are available to us to just help us make more decisions. But marketing gets involved, and using a term like autopilot, we've had a few people bring it up, and I loved Twitter reaction on it. It kind of just when they announced it, there was just a slew of SEOs in general are skeptical of everything. So when we first saw it going in there, it's just my main reaction is it might say we automated some tasks. BrightEdge to me it's a good tool. Is it the best? I don't think so. I think it's very expensive, and you could probably pay an SEO $100,000 a year and have him do all your SEO, and be cheaper than BrightEdge. Or her. Sorry. Yes. And have them, have them kind of on autopilot for you, and actually have some human decisions there. So I don't know the full extent of it. I haven't really dug. I just see the press release that they put out. But at the same time, they had I haven't actually demoed any of the tools there. I've seen and heard some things where I think REI uses them and uses it for kind of if you like this category, you might like some other categories, and then they give you 10 links at the bottom of the page. Sort of like a Bloomreach type of deal that I think, but I don't think they auto create the content for you, such like Bloomreach did. But if it is anything like that, I've seen really great case studies with Bloomreach where rankings quadrupled, but traffic went down or didn't work great. And I've had a couple of clients where we've taken them off and our rankings have plummeted, and actually sales and traffic went up. So automating towards anything Google and anything's Google's algorithm is not, I can't trust it, right? And I don't think you should ever trust an automated tool to run your campaigns.
So let me tell you my feelings about BrightEdge, and I try not to be a negative Nancy, but they're pretty strong on this one. And I also don't like to complain and be snarky and glass half empty, like, well, I am a glass half empty person probably in life, but like at least in like my public facing Twitter persona, like unless it's like the Browns, you're probably not going to see me criticizing a lot of things. But this is one of them. And I will say that I'm not unbiased. So in my past job, Jeff, actually in your past job too, like we worked at an agency where BrightEdge was the SEO tool of record, and actually like one of the only SEO tools we had at our disposal. And I will say, like when I first got my hands on it, and this is like back in like 2011, I was like, holy shit, this tool is amazing. Like this tool is really awesome. But then as I started to like get into other tools, and as other tools started to evolve, I quickly noticed BrightEdge kind of falling behind, and it quickly for me became kind of a point of contention, to the point like where I wanted to, when I got somewhere else, I really wanted to dive into other tools. And when I did finally get a chance to dive into those other tools, I realized just how far behind I thought they were in terms of being like an enterprise level tool. And for how expensive they are, you just don't get as much as you get with an SEMrush or an Ahrefs or even a Moz in terms of analysis and research and competitive,
right,
reviewability. But the problem with this message, this autopilot message, is not the actual tool itself. It's, in my opinion, the fact that it is going to be permeated throughout the industry, through to marketing teams, to businesses and business owners, and they're going to again think that SEO is something that can just be put on autopilot, and it's going to continue to devalue our profession, when in fact, like when you actually probably look at the tool's capabilities, and if there's anybody from BrightEdge, like come change my opinion, give me a demo, change my opinion, and I will happily eat crow. I once ate crow on Ahrefs when I called it not that great of a tool, and Tim Sulo came along and changed my opinion. So I'll happily eat crow. But what I imagine this tool being, this quote unquote always on, put SEO on autopilot, is just a better marketed version of an SEO radar or an uptime robot or a content king, little warden, basically anything that's just detecting issues as they crop up. I don't envision BrightEdge being able to automate the process, nor should it, of writing content or determining which pages to create on your website, or analyzing competitors and taking that information and using it to determine strategy. There are a lot of technical things that can't and nor should they be automated. And I hate the fact that there are people probably in high positions that are going to take this and they're going to buy into this tool and think that it's going to do the job for them that a human used to do. I guess it's probably like having the machine in the grocery store when you could have the clerk ring you out. That's I feel like maybe like I'm like on the border of being the old person on the lawn yelling, "Get off my lawn." But I pretty strongly feel that you kind of need the human element in SEO still, because there are so many things that requires a human's intuition and a person to guide the strategy. And like last time I checked, I know AI is coming a long way and there's a lot of great things going on with machine learning in our industry. But last time I checked, Terminators aren't here yet. So I think I'm still going to have a job for at least a few more years. And I think that I can do my job better than BrightEdge's autopilot SEO program.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I will say about in like a positive note on BrightEdge is that the one thing they really do try to do, and a lot of these tools, Conductor or even SEMrush and Ahrefs now, right? They're trying to make it where they're pulling in every data. For a long time in SEO, Ahrefs was my link tool, and Moz was my keyword tool or something. Just going through all the different aspects that way. They are all now bringing in every single one of these features, which makes tooling hard because there's so much overlap now in these tools. BrightEdge being the enterprise level of that, like the most enterprise level of them. And by enterprise, I mean most expensive. They really like, you're coming into, you're a Fortune 100 company, you have an internal SEO, like here's your tool. It'll integrate in with, Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics and layer some data over top of each other. The thing that I don't think they did well, whereas I hated weekly rankings. I like my rankings daily, just even though I'm not reporting to my clients daily. If you've ever used weekly or monthly rankings and have done any type of site migrations or site redesigns, you really don't want to wait a week to kind of see how things are fluxing out. And then if you fix things, you don't want to have to wait a week. Technically, it might take a week for it to actually happen, but I want to see that on a daily. Like I'm going to see motion. I'm again not looking at my monthly reporting on a daily basis, but at the same time, just want to know when I make a change that it's actually working. I feel that them adding in some of those alert functionalities and things like that would be better off there. Now, they can give you an idea of what needs to be fixed, but as you know, and probably anyone who's worked at an agency doing SEO knows, getting things implemented is the hard part. Yep. I don't think they could ever do that because nobody in their right mind would just like let BrightEdge rewrite things for them.
Let the robot do it.
Yeah, let the robots. And I think at the time, that's what Bloomreach sort of tried to do, right? They created custom categories based off of like search demands. Never used it. I've worked at getting it off of people's sites and increasing stuff that way.
I've seen it in work, and I've seen it working for a client. The problem with that, and maybe even the problem with BrightEdge, I don't know, is like once you turn them off, it's gone. So you get stuck when you're paying, because in the reason to use a service like Bloomreach, and this is a tangent, is like if you have such severe restrictions on your technology backend that you can't add content to your site, or if there's a lot of red tape to go through, Bloomreach was a solution. Maybe BrightEdge is, I don't know, was a solution that could help you kind of bypass some of that stuff. And in an automated sort of way to create content, which you need in many cases to garner rankings. Like there's still a thing in SEO where like, if you want to rank for a certain thing, you almost always have to have a piece of content dedicated towards that thing. Enabled that, but the problem is, like I said, once you stop paying them, it went away. So you got locked in.
And Stephen Spencer with his Gravity Stream in the past, it was kind of a CMS that was not part of your site, that you could create pages and then it would it wouldn't redirect them. It would canonicalize over to his proper pages. I actually found it useful on some things where like there are some e-commerce sites out there and systems. I used to work at GSI Commerce and their platform, like we couldn't do a ton of things with. So being able to layer something like that, it was a Band-Aid. It's always a Band-Aid. Like the idea is always to have something on the site and having your system run right. But sometimes you just couldn't do that. And I think they solved a niche there that really help that. But at the same time, you don't pay, then that's all gone, right? So it's one of those, like, how do we, and as an SEO, I always look at it that way. How can we be evergreen? How can we you make our changes now, they'll last forever, compared to putting a Band-Aid or more of a PPC SEO kind of thing, like a paid SEO type of engagement, where I feel like if you, like Yext, I think had that also with their local, like you stop paying Yext and some reason your local's stuff changed. So it's one of those, like, we don't want to have to continually be paying into it. We want to build something, improve, and then improve off of that, and then improve off of that, and not have to worry about like going back to zero.
So what are some things that we feel like could and should be automated with SEO?
Right. So it's interesting. So the more we automate like our reporting and bring that stuff in there, I do love automated reports, but I sometimes miss just digging into analytics, right? Because it's like you can report on all our premier metrics, or our top metrics we're looking at, traffic, revenue, of course, all that type of stuff. But we really like, sometimes I find those little nuggets just by sitting there and staring at analytics for 35 minutes and 40 minutes, an hour, and like, oh my God, I see something in a different way. I think we do miss that with some automation. But at the main thing, like my reporting times have dropped from taking me 5 hours to build a report to now the most of the report's already done. And now I can spend that 1 extra hour of digging into the data. So instead of taking me 5 hours, I've dropped that down to an hour, which is great. I think that's one of the things we can definitely do. Automating, using someone like Deep Crawl. I love Deep Crawl, and just having my crawls automated. Like Screaming Frog's great. I usually use it when like I want to find something out now. But Deep Crawl is great at like crawling, keeping track of our crawling, keeping track of our progress, and just knowing like, hey, I found it so many times, like I've given developers, like, here's some things we want to do. They're not always the best at telling us when it's done. So having something that's always looking, I usually run them on like a weekly basis, and I can see like, oh, look, all of our, 404 pages went away, or all our, issues that we had with redirects are now fixed. And usually like I just follow up with a message like, thanks guys for doing this. Like, I'm not going to nitpick that. I think as SEOs, we're always looking at people's sites anyway, to find out that stuff. And I do love that I can find out things that happen on sites before my clients do a lot of times, using tools like Uptime tools. I use Uptime Robot because it's free. So many times I've told my clients that their sites are down, and they're like, oh, thanks for letting us know, because they didn't know themselves.
Well,
so.
The problem with humans is we have to sleep. And,
Yes.
and that's what I think BrightEdge might be trying to do, is to be like looking at uptime and site changes. And if it's that's a good thing, but it's not like a holistic autopilot strategy. But like,
Agreed.
I don't
It's
know
maybe the naming.
yeah, we found like a rogue no index tag, or like a robot's disallow or exclusion that is caused. And this type of stuff, when applied to an enterprise site, can have $1 million ramifications. So like that's good, and that should be automated. And if that's what BrightEdge is doing, then good for them. I wish they would market differently. Site speed's really hard. And I would really like to see more automation there, especially with things like image optimization, because like what happens is you've got your developers and the people handling the back end, and invariably, like, okay, because there are a lot of people on a team that need to put content and do things on the website, many, probably most of which don't know how to code, or don't care about speed. Or just the things that we care about. I feel like I've seen so many times where like just a content author or a content editor or whatever uploads like a 5 meg image onto a web page, like no big deal, and there's no way to restrict them from doing that, because it takes the speed from 3 seconds to 20 seconds, and there's just no way to really kind of control and enforce and govern that. And there are tools out there and services out there that help with that. And it's something I would like to see more often, so that the folks that are uploading the images can do what they need to do without crushing users under the weight of their really poor site speed decisions.
Yeah, I mean, on like the WordPress front, like I like to use like the short pixel plugin there, which anytime I upload something, it's automatically doing that for me. I think they even have a new version now that crops everything, because I have one client who is the same way. Every time they update their site, in their main navigation on their homepage, they have like a kids section, and they always put this image that's this big, but when you right click and open a new window, it's 5 megabytes big.
Yeah, I was going to say, for people listening, Jeff is saying this big.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah. This is like radio. You have to be more descriptive. You can't just
it's my first episode, so I'm learning. It's like in a main kind of drop down nav. They put a little image there, but the developer uploaded it at a 5 megapixel size or something like that, where now that's on every single page of the site, and their whole site gets terrible scores because of that stuff. So having some sort of data asset manager or image serving platform, I know there's plenty of them out there where you upload to that, and that takes care of all that for you.
Cloudinary is a good one.
Cloudinary.
Cloudflare does it now. So
and there's also, I think, Adobe has Scene 7, which kind of gives you some other functions inside of it, but that's like another one that kind of does stuff like that.
So what else is going on in the news, Jeff? Tell me.
Well, you were talking about site speed. One of the cool things that I see that Google Search Console is experimental now. I'm not as lucky to get into that experimental phase there, but they are going to be implementing a ton of site speed reports inside of Search Console.
That's exciting.
Yeah, from what I can see, it looks like.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, so Barry Schwartz posted it up on Search Engine Land. I think it was today. It was probably maybe yesterday. Bunch of screenshots, which is great. It looks like they're taking everything from this Lighthouse Lighthouse tool and Google's Insights and putting it into like the kind of Search Console charts that we're used to seeing now, where we have like our 3 choices. It'll show us like our slow pages, our fast pages.
Mm-hmm.
I think they actually have a moderate page section too, which is good because we can see at this point which pages are the slowest, why, and it's site wide, which is awesome because most page speed tools, it's 1 page at a time. I think a lot of, for at least ones for SEO that we get, like unless you're using a tool like Rigor or some of these really web performance tools out there, which I would love to get a little bit more into. But just the reporting aspect of it, it's kind of been a tough thing. Getting your page speeds out of Google Analytics, they give you like a 0.0001 sample rate of people coming to your site.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime I try to get anything insightful out of that, it'll tell me like one of my main pages is like a 40-second load time, but no other tool says that. So I don't really trust the Google Analytics data on that. Could have been one person had a bad day or a bad computer or some plugin on their browser made it run a lot longer. So at least with this, we're going to get site-wide speed page tests and we can actually track that. And now with Google Search Console updating a lot more and a lot frequency, it's going to, at least be a day old data at the most. So
freaking Search they didn't do anything in Search Console forever, even after they made the migration, and they're on fire recently. It's been like update after, man, they must have had like a giant queue built up because it's been lately, like you can't even keep up with all of the updates that have been happening.
No, it's great. I mean, I'm adding like the video schema and video like impressions and clicks through it. That's been, I love video, right? And I'm a YouTube premium subscriber, one, because I hate commercials. Being in advertising, it's always fun that way. But and the second was because I like the new Karate Kid Cobra Kai TV show. So I paid to get in to see that thing and get rid of some. And now if I go onto like one of my kids' accounts and try to watch something, it just annoys me with the video or with the commercials there. But for my clients, I mean, I think video is great. I think video is awesome for stuff you're doing on your site. It depends on what you're selling or what your site's about. But we have a bunch of clients that have some really good videos and they host them on YouTube. And they have them on their site, but we don't ever know when anyone is going going from Google to their site to see a video. So adding the video schema, we always recommend that, of course. But now Google's actually showing us like, is our schema correct? Are we showing, the thing I like the most is impressions and clicks, and being able to go through some clients' data to say like, oh, look, we're seeing impressions. We're showing up for all these keywords for our videos, which that has kind of been a black hole to an extent. I mean, some ranking tools would tell us that, but you have to know the tool, like you have to know the keywords to search for. So at least in Search Console, they're saying these are the keywords that you're showing up for, whether it's 100% accurate or 100% all the keywords. At this early stage doesn't necessarily matter to me because I'm looking at it as like, I have data now, which I never had. So I'm dying for the day once I get speaker, Google Home speaker data in there too, which I think is not going to be far behind. I can't, 100% say it, but to know what people have searched for in their voice, I think is going to make Search Console, like it's already to me invaluable, but I think it's going to be like the most valuable item out there. So
additionally creepy as well.
Agreed. So. So I mean that's one thing I dig. Let's see, I have a little list here. I think one of the big ones that people had, and this is one that I've always had, I don't know, I think I had different feelings than most SEOs, and that's about H1s. And Google says H1s don't matter for rankings, and the SEO industry just went like nuts because they're like, you said H1s are important, and and like we got down to I think what happens is SEOs make rules and best practices. And so the whole like only having one H1 per page, like you were never getting a penalty. You were never getting anything by having multiple H1s. Technically, like coming from someone who was big into web standards and accessibility,
yeah,
like having multiple, like technically in HTML5, like you can have multiple H1s depending on the way you have your topics broken out. I would always, when I used to do a lot of front end development, I programmed all the HTML first before I even put any CSS or anything into it. So my goal was when I viewed it on a web page, it looked like a college essay. I had my headers properly. Your H1, one reason people think that should be only one H1 per page, which technically could be right on the page. It all depends page by page. If you had an article, you want to have that one theme per page, and your H1 is your top theme for it, and you want to have subheadings for it. I think Google like wanted to have that in their search algorithms, but how many websites have you looked at that had 37 or 100 H2s or H1s? Because every little contact us and SEOs, we like to abuse things. So if one H1's great, then why not have 50? Or if H2 is more powerful than a normal paragraph, let's make everything H2.
Or there's people that just don't know any better. Like WordPress, there's a reason WordPress is the most widely used content management system on the face of the earth, because like there was a huge population of people that have no clue how to build a web page, but that want to build a web page, and it makes it easy. And in some cases, like you can't always, nor do they want to or know how to control that stuff. But I always subscribe to the theory. There are kind of two things that makes me think of. One, the idea that we as SEOs, like we make up standards, and then like we just sometimes fall into the trap of just like blindly saying this is the best practice without testing it, like without actually, like I fell into the rel next and rel prev trap, where like I spent months working with a client to get it right, and it may in the end still be good for accessibility and usability purposes, but like we could have been doing better things. And because that was a best practice and they had really messed it up on their site, we spent months getting that implemented. And to find out that like it was just not even being considered was like, that really pissed me off. But at the same time, it was my own fault because I didn't test it. So like there's that element of things that we blindly just follow best practices without actually testing them in many, many cases. And then there's the other, it made me think of like, just like you said, it should look like a college essay. And I think that I'm still personally in favor of having a single H1, only because like I think in terms of like the overarching page structure, and I really do try to think of like how a person who's using a screen reader might think about the information. And I try to like think of every web page as like, what if this page was a chapter in a book? I try to think about it that way, right? In terms of how it's laid out and is it organized in a logical way. So I don't know. That's how I think about it. I don't know how.
Agreed. And most people used H1s or H2s, H3s as like styling aspects too, right? Once a designer and coder put it together and said my H2 was 14 pixels high and bold. If I needed that anywhere on the page, I just instead of using like understanding code, that there's meaning behind it. Like there's a reason, like there's like with a P tag means paragraph and header ones means header. There's also reasons like one reason why in the HTML spec, they got rid of the B tag or the I tag for bold or italics and changed it with strong and emphasis is because you are emphasizing this word. There's a meaning behind it. B just is like a style. So that's why that should go into your CSS. Now, if you want your strong tag to be bold, you can make it bold, but then you don't have to. But then SEOs also abuse that by like taking H1s and making them look like normal text, things like that. So in a perfect world, I think H1s would mean everything. Not everything, but it would be just as strong as a title tag. But we're not in a perfect world because people like to abuse things. Yeah. So
it's just like a lot of things in SEO. It's trivial bullshit that we get like we get bogged down by trivial stuff, and then we miss the stuff that's really impactful, that's like floating right under our noses.
Yep. No, totally agree. And I guess one of the last things I kind of had a chuckle with was Google kind of took a jab at Moz. When Moz posted about like all their new ranking things, and John Mueller kind of poked out and said, how are you getting that data? Because technically to scrape Google's site is against their terms of service. Though I think everyone they understand like, hey, by empowering SEOs makes Google more of the forefront and people focus on Google more.
Mm-hmm.
But people make a lot of money off of scraping Google. Google makes a lot of money off of scraping people. So
let's be real. Google is the world's biggest scraper of content.
Exactly.
Like, they got no room to talk. Get out of here. Google.
Agreed. We're just scraping their content. And if it wasn't for Google, if people scraping it, like SEOs would have less metrics to go by.
If it weren't for people creating content, Google would have nothing.
Agreed. And some people have the argument where Google taking my content and posting it sends me traffic, which then I can have ads and monetize off of that. Mm-hmm. Me scraping Google has no benefit to Google, but I believe there's a benefit. Like, I believe it puts it part of that industry. I mean, not most, I will say, but a lot of ranking tools really just focus on Google, right? And that's mostly because Bing is, even though they say 30%, they're like not 30%. But in general, I thought it was interesting. And in general, I think SEOs not having, and this goes back to like BrightEdge and everyone else, like we've kind of made a whole bunch of metrics, right? We're not in our standard analytics packages. Yes, we get our traffic and revenue and bounce rates and time on site. But like, to me, a lot of times once they get to your site, like those view pages and stuff is all about your site. It's just the getting the people to your site, right? And that's kind of part of the SEO to me. The on-site stuff I really feel is also a part of SEOs. We like to dabble in everything, right? So we'll dabble in UX and code. And that's why I think every other industry kind of, because we also have negative people in our industry. So they'll look at us that way, but we're generally want to make everything great. And that's part of what I love about SEO. But part of that was also reporting. How do we report on all this stuff? And we found creative ways to get numbers, and rankings was one of those where we, if you're not the first person who shows up, then if you're on page 10, that matters. No one's gonna ever see you. So
cool, man. So is that all the news? Is that all there is to think about this week?
Yeah, I think that's a good start there. I mean, and some of this isn't brand new, but it's one of those things where it's the news is always gonna pop up. Google's always gonna say something, and that's the other thing I love about SEO. There's always like some fun chatter online that you can, whether I partake in it or not, it's always interesting times. So.
Yeah. And I think to kind of put a bow on this episode, actually we this episode, I didn't expect to actually be that long, but we've had, I think, some really good discussion. And next week, it's not just going to be me and Jeff. It's going to be me, Jeff, and Simon Cox. And every week, it's going to be me, Jeff, and either one or sometimes two people. And I think what's going to happen is it's just going to be a great discussion. And honestly, I got tired of hearing my own voice. So it's going to be awesome. We're looking forward to it. We've got a lot of great stuff lined up. And here's to season 2. It's coming like a freight train, or the little engine that could, one of the two.
No, yeah, it's gonna be a good time. I'm excited to be here, and I think I'm just excited to meet a whole bunch of new people and talk to them, because talking to people through Twitter or talking to people, through whatever social media platform is not the same. And sort of like you, I don't get to get out to a bunch of conferences, nor do I like push a ton for that. There's some that I would love to be able to get to, but this is a great way to just have to sit down in one-on-ones and, not just like pull somebody apart, like to a side at a conference. Like we get to spend some time, which is great.
Yeah. We get to meet people for the first time, and everybody gets to watch and listen to all the awkwardness.
It's awesome. Yes.
It's like a third person view on pulling somebody aside at a conference and talking. So we're doing it. All right. Awesome. Everybody have a good, actually this episode is going to come out on Monday. even though we're recording on Fridays. So everybody have a good work week, and look for next week's episode.
Yeah. Monday's my favorite day.
Yep.
All right. Bye, everybody.